Hodge On Nodge podcast. With your host, Hodgeythehack.
Good evening, troops and troopettes, and a very warm welcome to episode 3 of Hodge On Nodge. Do you think that drum fill at the end's long enough? I reckon maybe I'm going to edit that a wee bit and make it a bit shorter. So I have to say, first off, the success and support that I've received over the first 2 podcasts has been absolutely wonderful. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. But we're doing something a bit different tonight. And this is, I'm going to admit, it's going to be a wee bit of a challenging listen or a watch if you're with us on YouTube. This is Mental Health Awareness Week. So although it's quite early in the Hodge On Nodge run to come up with something as heavy as this to go into, it's very much the opportune time to have this conversation, and it's such an important conversation to have. And I'm delighted to say that one of the most eloquent and brave speakers I've ever had the pleasure of meeting on these kind of matters is with me tonight. And it's my pleasure to welcome Cedric Anselin to the Hodge On Nodge podcast. Cedric, how are you this evening?
I'm very well. As you can see, the weather is shining. It's beautiful in Norfolk.
Now, as mate, and I'm jealous. I'm in sunny Scotland, where the summer consists of about 3 days normally. But I'm gonna do something here that I think is quite important and an educational point for people. I'm going to ask you. I've asked you how you are, Cedric, but I'm now going to say, how are you feeling, mate? Are you feeling all right?
I'm feeling well. I'm feeling great. As you can see, I'm down. I'm good. I'm happy. I'm strong.
Look at me, mate. I'm just a wee white guy. Never take a tan very well. But the reason I did that, mate, is because what you often find with people is if they've struggled with mental health in the past, if you say, how are you? It's like, yeah, I'm fine. But if you say, how are you feeling? Or you ask a second time, that's when you tend to get the true answer, isn't it?
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on there.
Yeah, so I think that's important, and it's reasons like that we're having this discussion tonight. So tonight's pod, just for anyone that's listening or watching, is going to be split into 2 segments. So first we'll get Cedric to tell us his story, which is very, very powerful. Even if you've heard bits of it before, I'm sure it'll be great to hear it from the horse's mouth, as it were, tonight. But what I also want to do is, you'll see the title of this as it's an open forum. It's the Hodge On Nodge Open Forum on why mental health matters. So please get in touch with comments, with questions. I'm sure some of the stuff Cedric's going to say is going to trigger thoughts and feelings that you've had, especially if you struggled, as both me and Cedric have, with mental health in the past. And we will try and cover as many of the questions and get as many of the points of view across as possible. So please, let's get the comments going on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook. I can see them all, and I'll try and address as many of them as possible. But Cedric, the first place to start is, tell us a bit about your own struggles with mental health, mate, and the kind of background there, because I'm sure some of the people listening might know a little bit about it, but where did it really start for you in terms of things getting a bit dark?
Well, I thought everything starting to be a bit dark, a bit cloudy when I was probably at Norwich City. I think I was on my second year. I was not very playing that much. I was injured quite a lot. And I think the key moment is when I was driving to Cone, to the training ground in Norwich.
Okay. What happened?
I burst in tears in the car park just before walking actually in the changing room to just come into a training. Don't know why. I just burst in tears. I was crying in my car. I didn't want to get out. Just purely on. I was petrified to walk in a changing room, to see the regards of my teammates and basically getting judged. What's wrong with you? And you know it is. You do a job, or I was doing a job that I absolutely loved. It was a dream of mine when I was a very young boy.
Well, of course, man, and like you achieved some great things in your career. Obviously, Liga title winner, I believe. Played in a European final. Played alongside Zinedine Zidane, one of the best players of all time. I mean, like some amazing stuff, and was part of it maybe that it was a bit of a come down, just sort of coming to Norwich, a regional club. Like, and by the way, I'm not dissing Norwich. We both love the club. I know that. But was there an element of like you've gone from that real peak to struggling to get in the team at Norwich City? Was that part of what was bothering you, maybe?
No, not at all. It was not obviously nothing bothered me to move from Bordeaux to Norwich and the size of the both clubs. It was none of that. It was I don't know. It was difficult to describe the time. Playing. Really part of the squad. The squad travel away to the away games. You stay at home. You got your own program. You stay in a changing room or in a medical room to do your rehab. You're not really part of anything.
You're isolated, yeah?
Yeah, that was the key. It was, I'm a very people. I need to be around people. I need to feel loved. I think that's the key with me. I've got a character that I need to feel praised. I need to feel loved by people around me. And when you're injured, you're not part of anything. Is as you mentioned, you got the old teammates who come to see you. Are you all right? How far you are? When you're going to come back? But I didn't have the answers of that. So I felt very isolated, very lonely. So yeah, it was a difficult time.
Yeah, I can imagine so. And did you have anyone you could kind of lean on or speak to about it at that point, or were you very much alone? Because it was a different culture then as well. In dressing rooms, it was very much, that kind of sort of macho, it's a man's game, and you had to sort of stand up and put on that social camouflage, Whereas, I think now people are a bit more understanding of the concepts of sort of mental health and are more aware of it.
Yeah.
But did that make it even more challenging, the sort of nature of the dressing room banter and all of that stuff back then?
Yeah, of course. Obviously, we're talking in the late 90s where it was quite difficult to go to knock on the gaffer's door and have a conversation about what was wrong with you. And to be honest, I didn't know what was wrong with me. I know something was not right, and I was feeling emotional all the time. I was worried to make mistake even in training, and even worse on match days. I was locking myself in the bathroom before actually going out on the field. So it was that bad. And again, it's a conversation that is difficult to bring on a table with your gaffer because, as I said, in the 90s, it was not something that you could easily add that conversation with anyone. So, as you mentioned, is a macho industry, football or high athletes, and it's not something you can easily talk to even your teammates. And I thought I was going to keep that to myself, and it will pass, but it didn't pass. It was actually getting worse and worse and worse.
So talk us through those different points then, because obviously there's that initial feeling of isolation, that feeling of kind of maybe a bit of helplessness. Where does it progress from there to the point that you actually do make an attempt on your own life eventually? Because that's obviously like a really grave progression,
Yeah, but with me, it was a different sort of steps. I was not playing; I was injured. I had an extra year on my contract. And the club and myself and my agent decided to take the contract and ripped it and said, shake each other's hand and move away. So obviously that happened, and I found it difficult to find any club. But again, I was in the mental state where I was not unable to find a club. I was unable to perform at my best ability. I went to trials, but it's like you're going to a trial, but you know the answers. Do you know where I'm coming from?
Well, no, I don't. So you mean you're going in there and you already know that there's no chance of getting a contract?
Because mentally and physically, I was not prepared. I was not prepared to go to them trials.
So it's like a defeated mindset kind of thing.
Exactly. So I already knew the answers before I actually stepped on the training grounds where I was going on trial. And in the end, I just thought, you know what, enough is enough. I don't want to play anymore. And it's what I did. I just sort of drift myself away from the industry, from the football world, from a world that I work really hard to be there. And it's not a world that is given to anyone. You have to work really hard to earn your professional contract in them days. But, you know, as you mentioned earlier, these days now is more acceptable. It's more out there. It's more people talking about a bit more. You got more players talking more about their own issues. You got more people within the club who are there to support the players who are feeling a bit low or feeling a bit down, and they obviously stay confidential inside a room, and at that time we didn't have that. So, but coming back to my trials, no, I just laughed. You know what? I thought is enough. I just I lost the motivation. I fall out of love of the game because I didn't know if I was going to be able to gain my fitness, my mental health back on track, my love to the game again. So as I said, I completely drift myself away from the industry that I work really hard, and moved to Lowestoft, and me and my ex-wife lived in a caravan. So yeah, it was a bit of a tough time, but coming back to your question about the thoughts and taking your own life is...
Yeah, the progression. So I'm
Yeah.
interested in how you go from sort of just the feeling of isolation, and I've been depressed. I've been in that situation, but I've
Yeah.
never got to the point where I've gone, do you know what? Enough's enough. Let's turn the lights off, you know?
Well, everything sort of like crept out when myself and my ex-wife decided for her to go to university. So she got a placement in London University. So obviously she left Norfolk. But again, it was how I can explain that. I've reached my dream. I've done what I always wanted to do, to be a footballer professional. She always wanted to go to university and study what she always wanted to study, dentistry. So that was her time. And I thought that was very good for her to actually, at her age, to move away from a marriage, to move away from kids, to move away from a structure and a comfort zones in Norfolk, to actually wanted to do something she always wanted to do. But I didn't understand the impact that will have on me, the pressure that will have on me to obviously being at home with the kids, to look after the kids, to take the kids to a school run.
It's a lot of pressure.
And I was not complaining. But within that 2 or 3 months, I starting to feel really down, really, really like creepy, very bad in my mind. But I didn't want to talk to her about it because I was worried that if I was going to mention anything, it would have stopped her to actually enjoy what she's doing at that moment, to go to university, and she was happy to do so. And I thought if I said something, she might decide to come back in Norfolk. And I said, no, okay, I can't do that. So I keep everything to myself. And it come to a point where I was planning to take my life about 30 to 40 times a day, different ways, planning my...
So what kind of thoughts do you have? Like, I mean, is it like a fleeting passing thought, or is it a kind of like you're basically obsessing over the idea?
I would not say obsess. I would say it was like a voice on my shoulder telling me there's no purpose to carry on living because your dream is gone. You got no purpose. And of course I had a lot of purpose. But when you're very low, when you're very down and you're depressed, you don't see them things. You don't see them. Then you don't see the life of happiness. You see that cloud above your head, that darkness, and you feel like everything is negative around you, and you feel like you can't breathe. I feel like I couldn't breathe. I think like I need to have a break, and I couldn't. So as I said, I was planning to take my own life. I was planning to my funeral, how many people I will have. I'm at funeral, how many people is going to cry. It was like I was going so far ahead of everything. And it was horrendous. It was draining me every day to a point I didn't want to get out of my house, to the point where my ex-wife was coming back from uni at the weekend. I didn't want to talk. I was locking myself in a room, to the point where I couldn't even take my kids to the play park. I couldn't bear the voice of my kids, missing so many birthdays of my kids, and things like that. And I couldn't see any sort of positivity where and how I could sort of approach people, where to go from here, because I didn't know what was wrong with me.
Yeah. No, and I can understand that. I mean,
And again, we come back to what you said, nicely about being macho. I didn't want to approach my wife about it at the time. I thought I was the man of the house. I didn't want to see her or to judge me about my feelings, and I was worried that she was going to leave me and things like that. So I've decided to say nothing, but that had consequences later on.
yeah. And that's an interesting point to make, because we've actually just had someone that we both know, who's Jake Watson, who's now
Jake.
working for Talk Sport. He's a cracking guy. We've done some stuff with the Pinkin in the past with him. But he said he just wanted to pop in to say hi, and a few years ago he went through a very difficult time, and Cedric was amazing with me. He's a great guy. And that's something that you've definitely done in latter years. And I'm going to come on to that in a wee minute. But I think what that underlines it underlines the importance of talking. Because if you internalize and manifest all of this negative feeling and sadness and all of those different type of things inside of yourself, then what you're basically doing is you're creating a recipe for disaster within yourself. And that's a serious problem. And I should say, anyone else that's got any similar feelings and wants to get in touch with comments, please do, because we definitely want to address and make this an area where people have a safe space to talk. But yeah, it's important to talk, isn't it, Cedric?
Yeah, I will take an example, and again, first and foremost, I will apologize for sort of that way I'm going to explain. It's almost us as human beings. We don't go to the toilet for 5 years.
Okay, what do you mean?
So if you don't go to the toilet, for 5 years, at some stage after 5 years, you will have to go to the toilet, and it will be an explosion. Yeah.
Yep.
So we have to go to the toilet as often as we can to empty ourselves. And it's exactly the same about mental health. We have to empty ourselves by talking to people to unload what's inside. Because if we don't unload what's inside, at some stage in your life, it will be a volcano and it's going to explode in a negative way. And it happened to me. I completely exploded because I was taking too much and keeping everything too much, and I couldn't cope anymore. And as I said, I was that close to take my life.
And if you don't mind me asking, I mean, I've seen a few reports about the phone call that you made, but can you describe to me that day, how the progression of events went that day? So if you start maybe in the morning, like with how you sort of felt that morning, and then how it sort of went from there.
Well, I remember the day like it was yesterday, clear as crystal. It was a Monday.
Well, none of us like Mondays.
No.
I jest.
It was a Monday, and I didn't have a good week. Obviously, I had a tough weekend. Sorry, and I had a thing. I would say, just my ex-wife told me that she was leaving, and my world completely crumbled. I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know what to do. My worries about was, how am I going to manage the divorce? How am I going to manage the mortgage? How am I going to manage to tell the kids? How are we going to manage, to do all of that? We've been together 18 years. It's half of my life with that person. Half of my life, all my life in England with that person. And I felt completely lost. I felt my foundation, my base were gone, my rock gone. So it came to the weekend. I was like, nah, that's it. I don't want to be here anymore. So I was planning. So I actually bought a rope, planning on a Sunday. So I went to my loft, and obviously I'm not going to come too much to details. The Monday morning I go to work, and all in the morning it was the process of my mind, how I'm going to do, when I'm going to do, at the time I'm going to do. And in the afternoon, I remember I was with my student outside taking a training session. And I done the warm-up. And it was a bit of a cloudy day. It was, a bit of rain, and I was feeling down. I was looking at the floor. And I turned to my colleague at the time and I said, you will have to take the rest of the training session. I'm going home. So I actually left. By the time I left work to my house, it's probably about 15, 20 minutes driving. And it was probably the first time I've been so happy for so many years, purely because I knew exactly what I was going to do, exactly to the T. And I was thinking, no more problem, no more sadness, no more pain.
Almost as a freedom sat ahead.
It's almost like when you are in a changing room and your manager is taking you and giving you some instructions, and you actually go on a football field and you know exactly what you're doing, and you're comfortable with that. And I was feeling exactly the same in my car. I knew exactly what I was going to do, everything. And as I said, I was driving, I was happy, I was smiling, and I was in my house.
Sorry if this is an uncomfortable question. Do you mind sharing what you were planning on doing? I can totally understand if that's an uncomfortable...
No. It's not an issue because I've mentioned on many occasions I was planning to take my life, basically. On that Monday night.
What was the plan though? Is what I mean. Did you have a means?
It was a meaning of hanging myself. So as I said, that I bought the rope. The rope was in the loft.
Wow.
Everything was sorted. So I got home. I was turning around my kitchen. I was thinking about writing a letter or not writing a letter, things like that. And then I thought, no, take the decision not to do it, to write the letter, sorry. And then I started to make my way to the loft. So my loft was in the bathroom. So I managed to get in my loft. And as you know, in the loft, it's quite dark. You can't see nothing. So I was actually sitting on the edge of my loft, on the edge of my loft, basically, just that sort of that little, I don't know you call that.
Kind of alcove, but yeah.
Yeah, my legs was hanging in that little hole. So, and I had my phone in my hand, purely because I was using my phone as a torch.
Yeah, the light.
So I don't know how I managed. The torch sort of came to my eyes and just sort of like blur my vision a little bit. And sort of in a second, I thought, oh, I need to call someone. And I called Clark Carlisle at the time. And
so Clark obviously is someone who's had his own struggles, a very clever guy. I believe he won Countdown at one point.
He did, indeed.
And I think the story with him, he tried to step in front of a moving vehicle as a means of taking his own life. Back in 2014 or thereabouts.
That's right, yeah.
And Clark's obviously someone who, like yourself, had a very distinguished football career, and like yourself, also spoke very openly, very eloquently about it. And all I can imagine is that you guys had already struck up some sort of friendship or relationship based upon the fact that you both appreciated that you'd had struggles and had the relation that you were both footballers and things like that. Yeah,
that's right. At the time when I met him, he was the chairman of the PFA, I think, or something like that. He was like quite high up at the PFA, and I actually met him in London, and we straight away we had that chemistry, that understanding, that sort of like, as I said, it was probably the first time I met him, but I felt like I knew him for about 10, 15 years. We had that sort of straight away, that bond with each other and the understanding. And I called him, and lucky enough, he answered the phone. So, as I said, I was lucky that he picked up the phone because he has been there. He was there 2 or 3 years previous to my attempt. So when I spoke to him and I explained what was going through my head and everything, so we stayed on the phone for about an hour and a half. But because
what did he initially say when you told him,
but
I'm thinking of taking my own life?
is this what I'm saying is because he's been there, he knew exactly every process. So he's been in my place 2 or 3 years early. So he explained me the process. He explained me that I couldn't stay on my own tonight. I had to call obviously a friend to stay with me on that evening. He explained the importance to call my GP the next morning and explain exactly what actually going through my head. Make an appointment straight away, and basically I take the step that he gave me, and I did exactly what he did. He told me, and they said the next day I called my GP. I called my best friend who came that evening, stay with me, and as I said, the rest was history because the next morning I was seen by my GP very quickly in the morning. Again, lucky, very lucky, because I know some people, don't have that opportunity to see their GP straight away.
Well, yeah, it's especially in these COVID times. I think it's even more challenging, and I've not got any statistics to hand, but I'm pretty sure there must have been an upturn in mental health difficulties, especially now that people are more aware of it.
Yeah,
and I think that feeling of isolation is only going to be increased for so many people. And if anyone listening to this or watching it is feeling that way, then get in touch and talk to us, because that's what we're here for tonight. We're here to try and offer that platform. And I mean, I've never been as far along the kind of dark path as you have, mate, in terms of getting to the point where I'll admit I have once thought about taken my own life with events that happened in my life. I've thought about it once and quite quickly managed to sort of get the idea out of my head and never revisited it. And I hope I never do. But I think obviously suicide's one sort of extreme kind of end of the spectrum. But mental health it's a spectrum of different stuff. I mean, that's at one end, but at the other end, or somewhere in the middle, you just get that darkness that envelops you on a daily basis, that feeling of worthlessness, that feeling. I always describe it as a kind of, when you get in a reservoir, you get a dam, right?
Yeah.
And you've got a wall that's built up and it's like holding back all the water, right? So it kind of feels like you've built a reservoir up in yourself, right? Where all that darkness and that emotion, it's almost like I can kind of revisit those feelings as I think about it now. And I'm in a good place at the moment. I'm really happy doing the podcast and enjoying myself.
You look very well.
Thank you, mate. So do you. But when I think about that, I can almost feel those. It's like you feel it here, and it's like it's everywhere and it's inescapable. But it's also one of those things that you can camouflage it and hide it so well. And it's only if people are trained, if either they felt it themselves or they're trained to look for the signs in a kind of professional way or whatever, that they'll actually be able to tell. And I think that's why it's really admirable that you've gone kind of the way that you have in terms of becoming a mental health ambassador and all of those sort of things that you do now. It's really admirable. But at the same time, I bet you that really helps you as well. Like in terms of helping other people and getting proactively involved in a way that you know that you're making a difference. And even though your experiences were negative at the time, you're able to turn them into something positive to help other people. I would imagine that's the case, right?
Yeah, obviously when obviously I was diagnosed by the doctors and all the team at the Helsden, it was almost like I knew what was wrong with me. It was a clear path now, so I knew that I could move forward. I had the help of the professional. I had sort of like knowing the triggers. I was starting to develop an understanding about my triggers. One was starting, as you said, that anxiety was coming. My thoughts was coming back. But again, I had the triggers. I had to deal with it. And in the past, I didn't know what was wrong with me. But I thought, because you know me, Stu, I don't have a big ego and things like that. But I thought, well, I'm an ex-footballer. If I can help people through my voice by telling my story, maybe I can help some people from the public, just not in sport in general, but but the bigger picture. And I thought, yeah, that is something close to my heart. I am not saying that I'm an expert, but I've got an experience, and I know what is possible, what we can do as human beings, because we are strong. We can be very strong, but again, we have to surround yourself with good people, positive people. We have to exercise. We have to have a good diet plan. It's a lot of little triggers. For me, I went back to exercise because obviously it was my background. But everyone is different, Everybody is different. They need to find the little things that can help them when they're feeling a bit down. But I always says to you, we are born with a mouth to talk, two eyes to observe, and two ears to listen. But sometimes we don't take that. We take it for granted. But we need to use it because that is powerful. That what we're born with, and we're here to help each other. We got a duty to care for each other, not to talk negative about that person or that person who is on my left, who is on my right, because maybe one day you could be that person, be down, and and we need to look ourselves. We need to look after ourselves, but by looking after ourselves, as I said, we got a duty of looking after everybody who is included in your network. But even some people you don't really know, it doesn't stop you to smile to someone. It doesn't stop you to ask if you're right, how you feeling today. It doesn't stop you to. It doesn't stop you to open the door. It doesn't stop you to flick the kettle to your wife or to your girlfriend. It's not the end of the day when your girlfriend said or your wife said, "Oh, can you make me a cup of tea, darling?" And you go, oh. Do you know what I'm saying? That is little things we take granted. We take granted the relation, and when relation is gone, is where you actually understand what is missing.
Yeah, I think that's really well put, mate. And I think part of where I can totally relate as well to your way of thinking about it is, I think when people hear a former footballer, because everyone thinks like you're a footballer, it's this ultimate job that you could have, but footballers struggle the same way that everyone else does. And I'm always reminding people, and I think you realise it more if you're involved within the game or if you're a journalist covering it like me or whatever, that footballers are human beings too. They come in all shapes and sizes and types. Like you get really clever ones, really dumb ones. You get all different types of footballer, right? Vulnerable footballers, strong footballers, whatever it might be. And I think what is relatable for people is when they see someone that, especially someone like yourself, who's been at the pinnacle of the game, albeit for an early stage in your career for the most part. I think when they see that someone like that can have those struggles, I think it almost makes some people go, well, do you know what? It means that I'm not weird or bad for feeling like this. This is just me, And that idea of sharing those feelings is something that I think has to be done, because I know for a fact that as soon as I started just admitting that I felt like absolute crap sometimes, and sometimes it can, and the thing is, people always criticize, right? So I mean,
but that is the nature of human being. We like to criticize everything. We like to whinge about everything. We like to be negative about everything. Because what? Because the modern society now, the modern life, when you watch TV, it's all about negative sales, and we're quite happy to read negativity. But if we can change a mindset about being more positive, people said to me about what I've been through in my life, and people think, oh, poor Cedric, or bless Cedric, or it's been. No, I look at it as an experience, because it make me who I am today. Is a negative, but I've managed to turn that into a positive, and it's always a positive and a negative. But we have to find a way. We have to find our own path. But a lot of people just run to that obstacle and run back. We have to be strong and go through that wall, and not go through that wall as a footballer, because we know footballer tackle with feet first. We have to tackle issues as a rugbyman, head first, and deal with it, because it will make you a better person. It will make you growing. It will make you to understand yourself, what you're actually capable to do.
That's a really good bit of advice. And I think, yeah, it's like run into the fear, not away from it, you know? And I think that's a really important message. And listen,
But again is I always said, we are born when we were babies. When you done your first steps, you make your first step forward. You don't do your step backwards.
No, you're right. And I think
life is exactly the same. We have to move
life
forward.
is like that. Life is like that. And I think an important thing for me is just to sometimes social media, it can be a force for good, but it can be a force for so much negativity. And I did a thing called My Corona Podcast last year. Episode 2 of that is about staying sane in the social media echo chamber. And I've had people have a go at me in social media, but at the same time, I've also sometimes put what some people might consider to be an attention-seeking tweet up or whatever, but just saying, look, do you know what? I feel crap today. And like, see the amount of people that come on and said, do you know what, Hodgie, good man, because like I totally get that. I feel like that sometimes. Thank you for putting that up. But like sometimes people want to see that because it makes them feel that they're not alone.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that's important. We've had a nice question come in from Lindsay McInnes. She's asking, she's one of our watchers on Facebook. She's saying, do you think football's doing enough to support players, and particularly after leaving the game as a result of being taunted about his mental health? I think she's referring there to a recent story about a footballer called David Cox, who was a lower league player in Scotland who
retired.
He retired, and like yourself, he sort of had an attempt in his own life. And I believe now all of this is pending sort of investigation and such, but the allegation is that someone said to him, it's a shame you didn't get it right, or words to that effect about that suicide attempt, which is obviously an absolutely vile thing to say. But Lindsay's question is football doing enough for these people? And just as an adjunct to that, not even necessarily just people who are currently involved within the game, but ex-pros as well, because a big problem is when footballers leave the game. And like, because football is this all-encompassing thing that takes over your life, right? Once that goes, right, that's a huge void to fill. And you look at, I mean, the first public figure that comes to my mind when I think about that is someone like Paul Gascoigne, who seems sometimes like a wee lost soul without football there to focus, to give his life a focus and a purpose, you know? So, I mean, do you think the authorities within the game, Cedric, are doing enough to try and help current pros and ex-pros who are suffering with these issues?
I think this is a very good question. I think in this modern, I would say, in that industry of football, I think is moving forward, for sure.
Okay.
But it's not moving quick enough. And again, why is not moving quick enough? I think it's all about money. Some clubs in Premier League are moving forward and help their players at present, and also some of the past players. But it's not every clubs who have or are able to help. And I always says, you know, what is important. You know, I'm coming back right to the academy players there. You know, academy players, boys who leave their house such as a young age, and they've been through quite a lot in the football club, and then suddenly, I'm sorry, but you're not going to sign your pro contract. That is absolutely devastating.
Absolutely, yes, huge, you know, for these young players.
And then that's why I'm not angry, but I'm pushing so hard for that. Is they should have people to follow them players 2 or 3 years behind and trying to help them to find a club. But it doesn't stop them to go to visit them, to keep contact with them. You know, a following behind. You know, they've been part of that family. They need to carry on the contact with them players. And not just said, sorry, your contract is finished. We're not going to renew. See you later. You can find another club. By the way, this is your statistic about your games. This is your video. You can give that to your agent. Off we go. And you touch exactly right. They are human beings. We are all human beings at the end of the day. But again, the game is moving so quickly. There's so much money. It become a business. And I always take the example of if you take an orange juice and you squeeze that long, it's giving you some juice. And if you carry on squeezing, at the end of it, you got no more juice. And what you do, you chuck the orange in a bin. And I think sometimes in that industry, it's a bit like that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think you're totally right.
I do believe that is going forwards, but not quick enough. I think that, as I said, clubs are got a duty of care to look after them players. For me, even afterwards, the FA, the PFA need to do a lot more behind that.
So you've got the FA, the PFA, right? But you mentioned the clubs themselves. I mean, where does the responsibility come ultimately here? Who would you say needs to do most, and what needs to be done? What would you suggest? What measures could be put in place? So let's look at it at three different bits. So we've got the young players that get released and don't sort of manage to progress through to the professional game eventually. You've got the current pros who are struggling with, let's say, social media stuff or other factors in their life causing mental health problems, depression, whatever. And then the ex-pros leaving the game. So there's three different stages, key stages in the football and life cycle, if you like. Who's got to take responsibility there? And what can you do to try and improve that at each of those stages?
I think everybody needs to take some responsibility. I think the club himself sometimes, because the current players is actually under the contract. So he's the umbrella in that club. As I said, I mentioned earlier, the PFA need to also look after them players when they are mentally not right to play the games. Because again, now these days we're buying a players at £30 million. If the players can't perform and he's got a price tag of £30 million and he can't play because he's not got an ankle injury or an injury, but he's got a mental blockage there and he's depressed, of course the club's not going to say, well, he's not playing because he's depressed. They're trying to obviously cover some issues behind those. And it has happened to every club. Now, as I said, a lot of clubs are moving in the right way and helping them players and helping the players afterwards. It's almost like they need to have a section in the club and someone who actually been employed to look after them players who are struggling, and I include them academy boys in there as well.
I think that's an interesting one. What kind of measures can you take other than providing a sort of open forum where people can speak? So I think that idea of having, let's say, a mental well-being chief.
Well, we got now in this modern life, in modern, coaches, we got striker coaches, we got set pieces coaches, we got defender coaches. What we don't have a person who can look after them boys who've been released, who've not been kept, and keep that contact. Do you know what I'm saying? Maybe because it's my own character. I like to look after people, even after, I'm always in contact with people all the time to make sure they're all right. I'm not seeing them every day, but I text them on a regular basis to make sure they're all right, what they're up to, little things like that, making sure that I have not forgot about them.
You did the exact same with me when I told you I wasn't feeling well at one point. I remember you texted me like for a couple of weeks. You were like, "You okay, man?" And yeah.
And I've done the same with Jake, and I've done the same with many, many, many people, even some people I don't know. It's just to make sure that they are okay, and it don't take you, an hour to text someone and just ask a simple question: "How are you feeling today?" Do you know what I'm saying? And when I hear people saying to me, "Oh, sorry, I have not been back to you because I've been really busy." Yeah, of course everybody's busy, but it don't take 2 days to text back. I'm sorry, because I believe that if that person, it happens something to that person. Imagine for the worst case scenario, that person take his own life. How you make you feel that you have not texted him back?
No, exactly. No, it's a fair point, and there's got to be that interrelationship and interactivity with friends and with your network, and it's good that there's people like you that sort of reach out and do that. But I think I think the key point that we're kind of hitting on here as well is there's got to be, I mean, everyone with a black, I don't want to get off topic here, but with the Black Lives Matter and all of the stuff, the anti-racism stuff, a lot of people are believing that the taking the knee and stuff, the term virtue signalling gets used because it's the idea that you're doing something and it's an empty gesture. Now, in terms of the mental health side of the thing, there are certain movements to try and increase awareness, and actually as much from some of the broadcasters as the actual sort of bodies themselves, I think at times, but there's not enough. There's not enough there that's happening to try and support footballers and people in general. Because if you provide that support for footballers, right, then what that does is that sends out a statement to society at large that we need to do more for people. And I think particularly in the midst of this COVID pandemic and people being locked at home, being isolated, getting sad, it feels like the time where someone needs to just stand up and, as the saying goes, take the bull by the horns and actually address this. And we can talk, because this is, for the most part, a football podcast within a football context. Someone needs to take ownership there. But how do you create that swell, that movement, that desire for change? Because I think there's enough people that want it, but it doesn't seem like that message is getting through. So I'm not saying you're the man with all the answers, man, but do you have any suggestions as to how we could maybe bang on the door loud enough that message gets heard?
Coming back to the football industry, I think there's a lot more high-profile players, high-profile people who have sort of mention about what we're just talking about. And I think, as I said, if more and more people are comfortable and find the strength to speak out and speak about their own issue, I think it will be like a snowball, snowball. It will get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think we cannot just talk about a mental health week, because for me, mental health for some people is all year round. It's every day, it's every week, it's every month, So what we are putting the ethic of is mental health week, awareness, for me, is, for some people struggle every day for many, many, many years.
That's very true.
And they've been forgetting about it. I'm sorry. No, we need to talk about every day, every week, every month, every year. And more profile people will talk about it. And more is going to get, as I said, a snowball and get bigger and bigger. And then suddenly you will have more power people in terms of the government who will talk about it. During the pandemic, we talk about what the government talk about, or we spend X amount of million on this, X amount of million on that. I didn't hear anything about they spending X amount of mental health services. Nothing.
No, but you're right. And by the way, there was meant to be a plan for sort of social care and various other things that was meant to be unveiled, but that hasn't happened. And
again, I'm not having a pop. It's just me, because
but you're right.
I'm so passionate about mental health. I'm so passionate about people. I am proud to stand now and said, what, people say to me, oh, you have reached the other bridge. No, when you go depression, it's not another bridge. You deal every day. But because I'm strong mentally, I've got the right people around me to help me. When I had a wobbly period or a bit of a blip, I've got the right people around me to help me. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people don't have a lot of people around them. They don't know where to turn. They don't know how to talk. So this is what I'm saying is we need to try to reach out to them people who live, potentially, in Norfolk, in the middle of nowhere, where, is one bus every, 2-3 hours. How can we reach them out? They probably don't have a Wi-Fi. They probably don't have anything like that in terms of IT technology. But we need to be able to reach them out. Do you know what I'm saying? I
think especially, see, with Norwich being the football club that it is, which is brilliant. I mean, let's be honest, the Norwich City space at the moment's awesome. And it's not just because the football club's just won the championship title. I think of all the football clubs in the world, the connect between Delia Smith, Stuart Webber, the playing staff, the supporters, even though they're not in the ground at the moment, the community around the club, people like yourself, the ex-pros, the pundits, all the fan channels, like Jack and Chris Reeve doing their charity stuff, all of the journalists, everything around the football club. It's a fantastic space. So
It is a fantastic football club.
It's amazing.
Unbelievable. It's a family. It's a big family club.
You're right.
And we're talking about mental health, and I can say proudly that Norwich City are outstanding in terms of the inside, where they're actually helping the players, the academy boys over there.
So what insight have you got into that? That's really interesting.
I can't give too much.
Okay, but what can you tell us? Because it would be interesting to know where Norwich are excelling in areas that other clubs aren't.
Basically, I was approached by Norwich City 2 or 3 years ago by a person called Clive Cook, who worked at Norwich City. I think it's a CPD care for academy boys, and we had meetings and discussions and how we can help players who feeling a bit down, feeling a bit low. They've been released by Norwich, or they've been told they're not going to be kept. And Clive approached me and said, look, can you come to have a chat with the boys, talk about your experience? What do you think we can work and things like that? And Norwich are moving in the really right way about it. Why to tell a player when his contract finishing in May, telling him in April, say, sorry, but we're not going to renew your contract. So all I suggested to Clive, I said, well, why you don't tell the boys in October? Because of course the managers know that the players are not going to be kept at the end of the season. Or
that's a good point. It's like it gives you more time to mentally prepare, doesn't it?
And it gives you time to bounce back and settle and have a plan of action. You can go on trial somewhere else. You can have a scout coming to watch and things like that. You can use the facilities and to help yourself to benefit you. You can use the people inside the club, and things like that. And when they actually leave, they're actually prepared. They got something to land back on their feet, and not telling a player in April, say, sorry, bye, but we're not going to renew your contract. He had a month, not even a month, to find a club. And that is stressful, that is pressure. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's a livelihood at the end of the day.
Massively.
And that's really interesting to know that Norwich are trying to take steps in that direction. And do you know what? It doesn't surprise me, because Norwich are the kind of club that tends to do that. Stephen, I'm imagining your name's pronounced Dewing, Stephen, but if it's DeWing or something like that, then I do apologise. But I'm going to go with Dewing. Stephen Dewing says, fair play, Stu and Cedric, much more needs to be done in this subject. Then mentions a Facebook group called Enlighten the Shadows, which I've never checked out, but judging by the name, it's maybe one of the many groups that now exists on social media. It's one of the positive things about social media, that there are spaces where people can talk about this. And some of the people that help me with this podcast, one of the members of the Hodgeythehack team, which again, I should say, this podcast is very much thanks to all of the Hodgeythehack ninjas, which are very much helping us put all of this stuff together. But one of the people in my team was sort of living themselves last year, recovering from something, and found that being able to reach out to the Norwich City community really, really was helpful. And I think that is something that we should actually recognise in a kind of positive sense. And it seems like a nice way, just before we sort of go into the last question, to say, like, it is good that these spaces exist and that these conversations now do exist, isn't it, Cedric? Because things are moving, albeit quite slowly, in football and outside football, in the right direction, aren't they?
Yeah, as I said, mentioned earlier, that everything is moving forwards. It's just not quickly enough. But it's a lot different services, and I'm talking around Norfolk. It's a lot different services who can help people. Of course, some services don't suit some individuals because for X reason. But it's a lot of people who are working tirelessly hard to promote services, to help people who actually need to be reaching out. And and I'm talking about on my behalf how I've been helped. You know, I've reached out, they give me the tools, and they let me lead, and now, you know, I'm in a good place, and I'm in a better place where I was 3 or 4 years ago. But again, I've not sort of stopped there. I've educating myself again. I've read books. I've trying to understand how the mind works. And
What have you what have you grasped from that? Is there any big takeaways you've had from that period of reflection?
no big things. Just for me was again is to plan my days, is to understand my triggers. You know, not just to take that anxiety and that depression to take over my mind again, knowing how I can deal with it. And I know when I've got a tough periods or where I'm feeling a bit down or a bit wobbly, I know what I need to do. And for me is I go back in the gym, I go back running, I go back on my bike, I start to plan my diet, I start to talk a bit more. That before I will probably like being quiet, stay on the side, keep everything to myself. And I mentioned again, you know, if you keep everything to yourself, I think it's going to be a volcano, it's going to explode, and worse to the worst potentially. And we found out, unfortunately, that people take their own life about it.
And a lot of the comments we've had, so some of them have not sort of popped up, are basically saying that they're thankful to me and yourself for having this discussion. And I think a lot of people are grateful that these conversations do exist on various platforms, some much bigger than mine, you know. And I think that's
but again is for people who are struggling, and you know, obviously hopefully we got quite a lot of people watching the podcast. Is I understand, because I've been there. I understand the hardest things to do is to make that first step, is to pick up the phone, is to talk to a friend. You know, that's the hardest things to do. And the minute you do that first step, and then suddenly you go your second step and the third step, and then don't forget, you are on your road to recovery. And you mentioned earlier about, you know, talking and asking someone, are you all right? You know, men's, if I don't see you, if we don't see each other for a month, or you know, and we bump each other in the city, I'm going to ask you, are you all right? Are you okay? What are you going to tell me? Yeah, I'm fine. And then that's it. It's no more conversation. And then it disappeared different part, you know, different way of your day in a city. The girls on the other side, the women's, exactly the same example, exactly the same scenario. They don't see each other for a month and they bump into each other in the city. What are you going to do straight away? How are you, darling? Are you okay? Have you got 5 minutes? Do you fancy to grab a cafe or coffee or tea? And off we go. They are in a car talking for hours. We need to take that example. We need to stop thinking where the macho, where the men's. You know, it doesn't matter you cry. It doesn't matter you feeling down. What it matter is yourself. Is what it matter is your happiness. It don't matter is to talk. Talk to your wife. Take the time. Feel the strength. Sit down. It's what it's all about.
And I think that's a really positive note to end on, mate. If you've got one sort of final piece of advice, and just actually a wee reflection on one of the things you said before we kind of let it go. I think other problems in your life, you can kind of apply the advice you just gave to. So, I mean, I've had a few problems with addiction in the past, which I'll probably come on to talk about in future podcasts. Maybe not this one, but other ones that I'm launching. And I think it's always taking the first step, whether that's talking to someone, whether that's reaching out. I think that's the most important thing to do. And Nathan's just brought up, and I'd sort of mentioned it myself at the start, and you've said it yourself, Cedric. Nathan mentions that he thinks it's very important that you say there's a massive difference between are you all right, are you okay, how are you? We don't take that extra minute to make sure. So I think if there's a takeaway from this, then we need to take more time. to find out how people are, to connect with people, to make sure they're okay, and just to basically care for our fellow men and women. Would you say that's fair?
Exactly, absolutely right.
Yeah, brilliant. So any final pieces of advice for anyone who might be struggling just before we go, Cedric? And thank you so much for your time tonight.
No, thank you for having me. No, the piece of advice I would say is, first and foremost, is to look after yourself. You know, don't try to do too much. Don't try to please other people. Don't try to put that mask in front of you. Don't try to act as an actor, because at some stage you will have to find and to understand yourself that sometimes it's okay to put your hands in the air and say, I am not all right. I am not okay. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong by admitting that. There's nothing wrong to take your mask off and say, look, I am not great. I need some help. But again, is the importance of talking to the right person. Sometimes you don't have to be your best friend. Sometimes it can be someone at work where you have creating a bond and relation, and you feel comfortable to open up. And that's what we need to do. And I mention again, is we got a mouth to talk. It's what we need to do.
Yeah, it's all about that at the end of the day. Open up those lines of communication. It's okay not to be okay. And I think the more of us recognise and realise that, then the better it's going to be. Unfortunately, our hour is up that I had allotted, Cedric. I'm sure we could talk for a lot longer about this. And I'm sure, to be honest, that me and you will address this again at some point, because I know it's a topic you're passionate about. And I know it's a topic that I'm passionate about. But I will leave you to go and enjoy the Norfolk sunshine this evening. You get anything planned for the rest of tonight, or are you just chilling?
I'm going to have my dinner.
Oh, you've not had your dinner yet? Well, let me let you go. No. And as they say in your home country, mate, bon appétit.
Merci. Au revoir, à bientôt.
Merci bien, à bientôt, mon ami. Excellent. Thank you very much to Cedric for joining us there. A real gentleman with his time, and one of the most eloquent and brave speakers on the subject of mental health and everything relating to that, to be honest. But that's all for this week's Hodge On Nodge podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast now, finally, by the way, on all of your favourite podcast platforms. It's now on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and lots of others. And of course, you can also get it on YouTube, and you can find me, Hodgeythehack, Hodgey, the Hack, on all the social media channels. So that's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and of course, Twitter. If you could give me or the podcast a wee follow and a wee like, then that would be much appreciated. But thank you very much to Cedric. Thank you very much to all of you guys who have watched and listened and got in touch with comments and questions. All of the ones that I didn't read out, I did still see. And I'm very thankful for all of your kind wishes. So thank you very much. But just remember, if there's anything that is bothering you that you're struggling with, then personally, genuinely, I will tell you now that I'm here. Send me a message. A direct message on Twitter is probably the easiest way to do it. If you are struggling, it's okay not to be okay. Good night and stay safe.